from me, welcome to Unity Spiritual Center of Panama City, and a warm welcome to our online community watching us today. That's pretty special. If you haven't participated in that, it's a great thing. I love what we do here with that. So today we continue our walk into this 4-week process that Reverend Joe started a couple weeks ago called a New Thought Advent. We're looking at the celebration of Advent for an understanding of why these 4 important elements were chosen years ago as a way to live in the Christ: faith, peace, love, and joy. In the first week, Reverend Joe brought an understanding of faith. Faith is a deeper inner knowing that which is sought is already ours for the taking. Reverend Joe stated the development of faith faculty is a key to our spiritual realization. Last week, Rosa spoke about peace. She gave us several definitions of peace. The Buddha says, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. Reverend Martin Luther King said, peace is not merely a distant goal that we seek, but a means by which we arrive at that goal. And then Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, states in the Revealing Word that peace is harmony and tranquility derived from the awareness of the Christ consciousness within each of us. Jesus, our way shower, says, peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you. Today, I'll be discussing the third element, love. In their talks, Reverend Joe and Rosa mentioned the history of Advent. They also mentioned the Unity 12 power closely associated with today's theme, which is love, and how that can show up in our life, and what it looks like in an infinite, and inner relationship with the divine based on the 3 faces of God that Reverend Joe talked about a few weeks ago, and how to build on that weekly theme personally and as a community. I'll continue to build on these Advent themes today. So as a reminder, Advent is a season observed in many traditional churches as a time of expectant waiting and preparation for the celebration of the Nativity of Jesus. The word Advent actually means to come or arriving. Similar to Lent, Advent is a preparatory season. It has significance because it is a season of looking forward and waiting for something greater. In this case, the annual celebration of Jesus' birth. The early evidence shows that what was called the Feast of the Nativity of our Lord was established within the later part of the 4th century. So it's a relatively new concept or celebration. So again, Advent was created by the early church as a season of preparation, waiting for the coming of the birth of Jesus. But remember, in New Thought, we recognize the birth of the Christ is when we wake up to our inner divinity. Just as Jesus had his inner awareness of God, we wake up as well. Have you recognized the multiple times that Reverend Joe has reminded us in the past year to awaken to the divinity within us? She has said it a lot. And obviously, all of humanity needs this constant reminder because we all need it. We all need to remember that. So during this New Thought Advent season, we remember what is important in order to live as the Christ: faith, peace, joy, and love. So now love. What is love? How do you define love? If I asked each one of you, how would you define it? I'd probably get a different answer. Do we give love only when we get love or something like it in return? Can we really put the definition of love or the meaning of love into words? There are so many ways we use to define or describe love in our lives because it is so pervasive. Love is very pervasive in everything we do and how we live. So we might say, I have love for my soulmate, or I have love for dark chocolate, I said that for Reverend Joe's benefit. I love football. I love my children. So what do you think? Or what did you think of when I first asked you that? What did you think of? What was your definition of love? Was it Paul's treatise on love in 1 Corinthians? Beautiful words in 1 Corinthians that he wrote in 1 Corinthians. If you haven't read that in a while, we're not going to go into the details of it. You can make a whole sermon on the love that Paul taught in 1 Corinthians. So we'll ask you to read it, at your leisure if you're led to. But I will point out that Paul says in verse 3 in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, if you do not have love, he says, if I do not have love, I am nothing. A very strong admonishment. Not that we are lessened or reduced, but that we are nothing without love. Eric Butterworth also says the problem with all of the many definitions of love, and Eric Butterworth is a noted author in Unity, Reverend in Unity for years. He says the many definitions of love, the words and definition, we could sit around and talk about it forever, but eventually we have to take action, because love is a verb. We have to take action. So what about divine love? Charles Fillmore from Revealing Word, you probably can't read all this, but I couldn't choose, this was so good, I couldn't choose just one or two sentences, so I'll put it all up there. Didn't want to bore you with all the slides, but I'll read it. If you want a copy of it, you can ask me. But love is the pure essence of being that binds together the whole human family. Of all the attributes of God, love is undoubtedly the most beautiful. In divine mind, love is the power that joins and binds in divine harmony the universe and everything in it, the great harmonizing principle known to man. Divine love is impersonal. It loves for the sake of loving. It is not concerned with what or who it loves, nor a return for love. Just like the sun, its joy is in the shining forth of its nature. That's the love that's in us. So you can see from this definition that Charles Fillmore describes in the Revealing Word, why we say in Unity, as you awaken to the consciousness of your own divinity, the divine within, the Christ within, you change the world. You change the world one soul at a time. And this is also reinforced in one of the most profound statements that we've ever heard, and that is God is love. That's in 1 John. It says God is love and God abides in us. Therefore we are God love, not God's love. We are God love. This is the Advent message on love today. Another definition from Paul Hasselbeck, who is an author and minister in Unity, wrote the book, The Power Up, that Reverend Joe, we talked about the 12 powers this summer. He says, love is the ability to harmonize, unify, desire, attract oneself to, and feel affection for. So Jesus gave us two important commandments. What was the first one? Do you know? Can you remember? Not a trick question. You don't have to answer. Don't have to raise your hand. Just, what was the first commandment that Jesus gave us about love? You shall love God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. And then he gave us the second one. What was the second one? The second is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And then he says, there is no other commandment greater than these. So how do we do what Jesus commands? Do we follow this commandment to love our neighbor only if we get to choose who they are? That's what we'd like to do, I'm sure. Obviously, though, in that second commandment, we have to love ourselves first by awakening to the divine within us, our human selves, our ego self. It's not possible. So as we do that, then we seek to see the divine in every person. We let the light shine in our own consciousness. Then there's a awakening concept. There's that awakening concept again. We waken up. Must be something to listen to about that. Jesus' teachings were and are radical. He goes on to tell us next, he says, you are to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Wow, love your enemy, you love your neighbors, now we're to love our enemies. Pretty radical. So we're to love even those people like coworkers, friends, and especially, yes, family members who push our buttons. Remember that those who push your buttons, they are your greatest gift from God. Why would I say that? It's because we get to practice seeing their divine nature. We do this for ourselves, not for them. We do that we see them in divine love. We see their Christ nature. Eric Butterworth also says, when we are upset over a situation or person, in other words, somebody has pushed our buttons, it indicates that we have been in the wrong state of consciousness or error thinking, error consciousness. Remember, you or I cannot change or control people around us, but we can, you can, determine the level of consciousness on which you meet and react to them. Turn the other cheek. It's a metaphor to meet the experience on your level of your divinity. Change your thought about it, the situation changes. The 12th power or ability that works with love is wisdom. We talked about all the 12 powers this summer. Paul Hasselbeck says, wisdom is the ability to judge, evaluate, discern, be wise, appraise, and apply what is known. So how would that relate to love? So there's a comment I heard from a teaching years ago that says, love without wisdom is foolish. Wisdom without love is harsh. So the two have to be in harmony together. Love and wisdom work together. What happens if they aren't? Well, you've all heard the song, Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places. That's wisdom and love not being in harmony. We've all done it. It's what we get to do to grow. So develop our love and wisdom abilities need to be developed together to create harmony in our life, our community, and our world. So here's the secret. All the love that exists in the universe exists fully in each one of us. We all hopefully learn to look for love we need from our divine self first. It takes us a while to get that, right? Again, looking for love in all the wrong places. But as we look for it first in ourselves, our relationships with those around us, the events, the places, the things, we see them from the divine nature. For me personally, I call upon my attribute of love, praying to let there be light in any situation or event. I expose any error of thinking to the light of love within me. I seek greater harmony, compassion, and caring. Because of the way I received the teaching of God in church, I spent many years of my adult life believing I was damaged goods. I'm sure some of us have had that experience. I had a hole in my soul. But I know now that there is no separation between God and me. There's no separation. God lives and moves and has being in me. I know I cannot be separated from God, nor can you. As a result of preparing this talk, I realized I've been in judgment about my stepson. Here's his family member again who's pushing my buttons. He's not treating his mom with respect. He will not communicate with her except to ask for money. Nobody's ever had that but us. So, and I've wrestled with this, so I can only let the light shine in my consciousness to see him as divine love, that he is. I know by doing this, the situation will change. Mostly for me. Mostly for me. Not for him. Maybe, but that's in God's hands, but definitely for me. So remember, I see this Advent season as a preparation for Christ to awaken in you. Answer your inner call to come up higher in consciousness. And in this Christmas season, when we prepare, we think about Advent. There's another concept. Advent is always arriving. The Christ is born in you every day, can be every moment. So Advent is always arriving. It's coming all the time. We experience the love of God in nature and science, people, relationships, even our pets. Reading a good book, so many different ways we experience God. When is the last time you really stopped and experienced the awe and wonder of your infinite God? When is the last time you stopped and experienced the awe and wonder of your infinite God? So in Unity we teach God is principle, not a person, not a guy sitting up in the sky like a lot of us have been taught. Yet there is nothing impersonal in the God mind in you. It is your mind at the point of God mind, but it is your mind. This is the inner experience of God expressing in you. So lastly, experience the awe and wonder of God the way John Shelby Spong, noted author and scholar, encourages us to do. He says we are to live fully and to love wastefully. Live fully and love wastefully. I behold the Christ in you. Namaste.